Want to watch football without the restrictions of blackouts or cable? Check out expressvpn.com to help you get access to all the live games. Sign up today using the link in the description to get 3 free months. Go to Bolt Fam, it's the director. Chargers fans, we finally made it, man. Our first game preview of the 2024 season. Chargers preseason kicks off tomorrow, baby. Let's go! Oh, my Lord, dude. It feels like it's been the longest offseason. The anticipation, the hype building for the Jim Harbaugh era, things coming together in terms of roster construction, and now probably the biggest narrative going into the preseason games is going to be the competition. This team has some premium competition all over the roster, including guys like Quentin Johnson, who I do expect to maybe see some action on Saturday. All over the roster, you're going to see guys fighting for roster spots and really honestly getting the starters right to build this new system, this new, blueprint that Jim Harbaugh and his team are laying out. It's very important these games to get those sample sizes, and it's going to be really fun breaking down each and every one of these weeks to show you guys what I'm looking for, some of the competitions that we're honing in on, some of the players that we do hope to see shine to better improve their odds to make the 53. So it's going to be a fun one today, man. We're going to break down what I expect to see in the Chargers versus Seahawks Week 1 preseason game. Before we do get things started, man, first off, if you guys are wondering how to watch these games, because I got a lot of people asking me on Twitter when I was watching the preseason game yesterday, this is how I'm doing it. And if you guys haven't seen already, the link is in the description. We are going through NFL Game Pass this season, baby. It's back. It's probably the most cost-efficient method to watch NFL football. It doesn't just work for preseason. It works for every single game in the regular season as well, live, and a much cheaper option than the alternatives that you'll find through the NFL. So definitely check it out, man. There's a little proof in the pudding of me just casting it over to my TV, watching the games, and having a good old time. Now, before we do kick off, shout out to the sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. Use code DIRECTOR to match your first deposit up to $250. Newcomers take advantage of this right here. But also, man, hey, we got NFL back, baby. I threw down a little cheddar, just a little bit, man. We wanted to put in at least one entry for tonight's games of Justin Field and John Ross. Very low, very simple, just to make things a little bit more fun for myself. But also, man, we got some fun stuff around the corner in terms of the actual Chargers football on Underdog. Dude, I'm so excited, man. You can now start putting or throwing down for that game, the Chargers and Raiders, as well as some cool specials you'll find up here at the top to choose one. These are boosters, right? Very fun time to jump into Underdog. Get your feet wet during the preseason so you know what you're doing in the regular season. It's one of the best ways to enjoy football, in my opinion. Before we do kick off, hit us up with a like and sub. If you do enjoy this Chargers content, the small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification helps me a lot. Let's get into our first preseason game preview. Lights, camera, action.
Who's got it better than us?
Into the end zone, Charger fans are witnesses to history!
We are back, baby. Chargers, Seahawks going down this weekend. Tomorrow, I'm so stoked. Of course, you guys will be able to find me live during that game. We'll call it or live stream it together. Watch parties is what we like to call it, man. It'll be a really fun time. Hopefully, loads of Chargers fans show up for the fun. Now, before we do jump into the details of the game, I do want to give you guys a heads up on who may or may not be playing this week. The short answer is I have no freaking idea. This is the Jim Harbaugh era, man, and this guy holds everything close to the vest. So really, honestly, no clue who's going to be suiting up on Saturday. All right. However, there have been a couple of guys listed by name that probably won't be participating. I would have to assume the guys that are maybe on the injury report, or not the unofficial. I shouldn't even say injury report. These are guys that have been off again, on again, practicing, maybe not full participants, maybe seeing trainers more often than not. Justin Herbert, Joey Bosa, Cam Hart, Bradley Bozeman, J.K. Dobbins, Ben Mason, Jamari Sawyer, and Junior Colson. As of, I think, this morning or yesterday, these are the guys that were listed as like limited in practice or whatever you want to call it. Again, we don't have any official injury report right now. The Chargers are not required to report these players right now, at least as by my knowledge. I don't think that that's required at this point. And so we really honestly don't know what's going on in terms of the injuries. And this has caused a lot of Chargers fans much distress, myself included. What's going on with my football team? Why is everybody getting hurt all the time? Well, if you guys are like me and you follow everything on Twitter that is Chargers, you'll know that the Chargers have been seeing the trainers a lot this offseason during practice. Those guys are some of the names included. But to kind of help alleviate some of those anxieties, I wanted to share with you guys something interesting that we dug up. Now, because I was feeling a little bit, not suspicious, but it felt off, right? It felt off the Chargers injury situation. As I said here in the tweet, it felt strange to me. I went out and called for Michigan fans to chime in on the subject, and one of our guys right here, Mark Leclerc, I hope I'm saying that right, man. Thank you so much for chiming in. He says, as a lifelong Michigan Wolverines fan, I can confirm this is a standard practice for a Harbaugh-run team. It was the same way when he was the coach with the 49ers. Coach Herbert is also very much an attention to detail kind of guy. Part of that is operating with a constant abundance of caution. This is what gets you through a long season intact. Serious injuries that cost players significant playing times were rare to non-existent at Michigan under the Harbaugh and Herbert era. What you are seeing is just part of a very familiar process for Michigan fans. Dude, huge, at least for me. I don't know about you guys in the comments. Huge for me to hear that from the mouth of a dedicated Michigan Wolverines fan, because honestly, I was getting a little bit worried. And then it actually went a little further than that. I had somebody message me I think he's a Michigan recruiter. He's with some pretty prestigious programs with the Michigan Wolverines, so a very reliable source here in Blue Print J. He messaged me later and said, hey, Jim had always been one step ahead of the opponent and the media. Of course, I like that. And then he says, Harbaugh has a weird way to most fans of doing stuff, but he's been very strategic. This won't be the only time things will feel awkward with Coach. That's just who he is, but I like it. Now, the reason I'm giving you guys all of that rundown before we even break down the game is because that's probably what we're going to experience in preseason. This is Jim Harbaugh's way of doing things. It's very strategic. He doesn't let a lot of things out the bag, right? No cats out of the bag right now. So what I'm expecting to see in preseason one in terms of the players, I think you're going to see guys out there that maybe need reps to help them, obviously construct the roster and determine cuts and all that. But more so, you're going to see a vanilla-flavored version of the Chargers roll out there that maybe isn't 100% representative of what we're going to be doing, just because that's maybe the way that the strategy is going to unfold. I could be completely wrong. Again, we know nothing at this point. It's preseason. In the end, it's all exercises and routines for the player construction, or to say the roster construction, yada, yada, yada. But in the end, it's Jim Harbaugh's team. And as a Chargers fandom, as a Chargers fan base, we need to start accepting an open mind, at least initially, to what Jim Harbaugh's process might be. We have no idea. Unless you are like a couple of these guys out here that have been Chargers fans and Michigan Wolverines fans, we just do not have the perspective yet. I'm going to kind of put my feet up, relax, have fun watching the game, and really hone in on some guys that I'm rooting for to make the 53 and to improve the Chargers roster and odds of being a successful team in 2024. All right, with all that laid out, I know it's a long one here, man. I think it's finally time to get into some of the weeds of this video, okay? All right. So the inactives, by the way, if you guys were wondering, unofficially are Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, and as listed, a few others. This was out of the mouth of Jim Harbaugh. I expect a few others could include pretty much everybody on the roster at this point, so we just don't know. So to kick off this game, this is Jim Harbaugh's debut, okay? And like I mentioned just a second ago, I think is a little redundant now, this is going to be something different than any of us have experienced as Chargers fans in a long time. Jim Harbaugh has a very certain way of doing things. It's going to be different than what we're used to. And again, let's go in with an open mind. That being a redundant fact, let's go into the next segment here. The battle for QB2. This is actually pretty freaking important, man. For those of you who missed it, the Chargers made a pretty big signing this last week by the name of a guy of Luis Perez, all right, quarterback from the UFL. This guy is a stud muffin when it comes to everything spring football. XFL a couple years ago, I think he won the championship. He was named the league MVP in that time. Last season, I know he had tremendous success. There's a lot to love about Luis Perez if you are a UFL fan. And you know what? When we signed him, I was like, cool, we got some competition back there at quarterback. Then all of a sudden, I see a bunch of people replying that have been watching UFL and XFL saying, hey, man, Chargers got themselves a stud. This guy's going to be awesome. This is a gem. He's likely going to be battling it out and have a good shot for QB2. Then you go watching some of his highlights, and honestly, it's easy to see why people are impressed. As a matter of fact, I think we had a couple on here. Hopefully, we're okay showing it. Actually, it'll be a little bit further down here. This kid, definitely has some traits that you want in a backup quarterback for Justin Herbert. I mean, take a look at that. He's got excellent pocket presence. The dude's got a pretty decent arm, right? Very nice ball placement. I don't know, man. Again, if you guys want to watch the full highlights there, definitely check out my Twitter where I have everything posted. But Luis Perez, man, he could end up being the real deal. And it's something that I want Chargers fans to monitor. Now, it's going to be a little weird seeing a couple 11s out there on the field. I know that's also Cameron Dicker's number. But watch out for the quarterback sporting number 11, because if he has a good offseason, if he has a good preseason, I should say, where he's out there slinging it and killing it, as you know, the backup quarterback who's likely going to see maybe a majority of the snaps in preseason games, right? I could very easily see Easton Stick only playing a drive or two, then handing a good chunk of the game to Duggan, and then of course Luis Perez. These are guys and these are things and these are situations that could determine the Chargers' future at quarterback too, because nothing against Easton Stick. He's a fine quarterback at times. I think the Chargers and its fans do feel like they could maybe do better, hence the signing of Luis Perez. And this guy, man, if he's everything that UFL fans have told me he is, the Chargers are going to have themselves a nice quarterback competition on their hands and likely another good option at QB2 as the season rolls on. All right? Next thing here. The Roman Army. We got the new offensive system going into place, and this will be our first unofficial preview of that. You know, training camp, some of the scrimmages that we saw with the Rams and stuff, pretty cool. But like in this environment, trust me, as someone who watched NFL preseason yesterday, it feels like it is more or less for real. Because for these guys, a lot of them, they're fighting for roster spots. They want a slice of the pie, right? They want to get in on the team, and you see the effort out there. And I think the Greg Roman effect on this offense is going to hand a lot of opportunities out to a few different positions. I think offensive line's a big one. Running back certainly is going to be huge. So these guys out here showing us the first preview of Greg Roman's system could also offer themselves a bit of a boost at certain positions for us to pay attention to. But first and foremost, I'm excited to see how this new system is going to unroll. This is the first Chargers running team that I've seen in a long time. Quite honestly, we haven't really had a good run game since like LT. Maybe there's a couple years sprinkled in there with Melvin Gordon and Ryan Matthews, but since then, man, we really haven't been known for that as a strength. I'm intrigued and excited to see that become a prominent part of this offense. So get ready for that. It's going to be a much different offense. So if you guys are just joining us now, getting ready for the preseason, you didn't watch anything in the offseason, you're just kind of coming out like, okay, time to stretch the legs and watch some bolts on the football field. Well, that's something to very much so expect. The Chargers are going to be more of a balanced team now, let's say a run-balanced team now, in which they're going to run the ball maybe as much as they pass the ball, which in the last 10, 20 years, we've definitely been more of a high-flying, high-volume passing team. All right? A big thing I want to watch in camp, man, that I'm so excited for is this man right here. Because let's remember, the starters aren't going to be getting as much playing time as the backups for the most part in the preseason, okay? You're going to see guys like J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards maybe not even take the field this week. I think they're among the inactives, right? Yes, they are. So the backups are going to be getting a majority of the opportunities out here, like in any NFL preseason game that you're going to witness. The guy I'm most excited for on our offense in terms of the backups, which is insane to say because there's actually some pretty good competition all over the roster, becomes down to two players. One of them is going to be Kamani Vidal. Okay, Kamani Vidal has a tremendous ceiling in this offense, and it's a big reason why I wanted to open with the Greg Roman thing. Greg Roman's going to help elevate some certain positions because of what he likes to run and what he's had success with in the past. Kamani Vidal is going to benefit tremendously from this system. On top of that, he's got tremendous talent. This dude went for a ridiculous amount of yards, a ridiculous amount of touchdowns. I wish I had it written down in front of me, but I know it was absolutely bonkers, right? 2,000 or something like that last season, or I should say, even just last season in college. Absolutely insane producer on the ground. He's pretty much the archetype that Jim Harbaugh has been rolling with, since his days at San Francisco. He's got that, compact, hard-hitting sort of style of running. I don't know, man. I'm very excited to see Vidal unleashed in this offense. If you guys are looking for players that should see plenty of snaps, I think Kamani Vidal is going to be among them, man. He's going to be a guy that I'm closely monitoring to be a bigger part of the offense just past a depth position and more of a guy that could maybe be featured down the road. As you know, J.K. Dobbins only has the 1 year on the contract. Gus Edwards has a couple of years and a structure that can maybe only keep him with the team 1 season. I think bigger things are in plan for Kamani Vidal, and I think we're going to see a nice preview of that, not just in this game, but throughout the offseason, or should say the preseason games entirely. The other running backs are also going to be pretty important to monitor out here. Isaiah Spiller, pretty big one. He's a guy that a lot of us were very excited about when he was drafted. Then, of course, maybe not utilized correctly, maybe wasn't the talent that we all hoped he was. This situation, again, benefits him. And I want to see what he's got, man. I want to see if the Chargers and all our hype when we drafted him a few seasons ago can come to fruition finally. But the backup running backs are also going to be something to pay very close attention to because they should see some success on Saturday. Other guys like Patterson and Elijah Dotson, those guys could also see some elevation out there. And ultimately, we're kind of looking and witnessing the battle for running back 4. Because I should say the top 3 are pretty much locked in place at this point. Who's going to take that 4 spot? I arguably could say that it's up for grabs at this point. Patterson's looked great at times. Dodson's looked great at times. Spiller's looked great at times. Let's see if maybe the preseason what's helped determine that running back 4 position. Next up, you guys remember how I said there's 2 guys that I'm on the offense that I'm most anticipant of in the preseason. The first one was Kamani Vidal. The second one is this guy. Okay, and I think a lot of Chargers fans have jumped on board of the hype train of Brendan Rice at this point. When I was at training camp a couple of weeks ago, and I was there the entire weekend, right? I got a good dose of what this team could look like. And this was back when we had Justin Herbert, mind you. One of the guys that stood out to me, maybe the guy that stood out to me in terms of, holy crap, is he more than what the depth chart tells us he is right now? It's Brendan Rice. Brendan Rice was absolutely insane to me in terms of his ability, his catching. His speed was underrated in my opinion. His separation didn't seem as big of an issue as I thought it would be in person. And then, of course, his potential is sky high all of a sudden, right? I really, honestly, truly think that Brendan Rice could become something special with this team. Maybe as soon as this season, maybe a little bit down the road, but these are the games you're going to see maybe your healthiest dose of Brendan Rice in action. And trust me, guys, when I tell you, you guys aren't ready, you're not ready. Brendan Rice, of course, there's been highlights and stuff out there. He's been great in the eyes of the fans. Even so, I think Brendan is going to turn out to be something special. I think, again, these are the games to see that unfold. And it hasn't really mattered who the quarterbacks has been or have been in practice for him. He's been a shining star, and I'm very excited to see that unfold. And it does represent a bigger picture here, too, because this segment's actually called the Wide Receiver Hunger Games, because there's a lot of receivers out there that are going to be playing for a roster spot. You got Cornelius Johnson out there. You got a couple of Johnsons right out there, a ton of Johnsons and a Johnston. I do expect Quentin Johnson, if he's healthy, to be out there, as I do think he's maybe wide receiver 4 in the depth chart right now. DJ Chark could maybe get some playing time, of course. Maybe Ladd McConkey doesn't because of the injury or whatever that he sustained a couple of weeks ago. Again, it looked very precautionary. Lots of wide receivers on the depth chart that, or I should say on the roster, that are going to be fighting for a spot on the depth chart. And Brendan Rice, to me, is going to be one of the funnest to witness, but don't sleep on other guys like Darius Davis, who can get more involved in the offense, right? Don't sleep on guys like Cornelius Johnson, who is a great, 50-50 ball guy and a great special teamer. We got to watch these guys play out, because I have a feeling that maybe only one of the 7th round picks makes the roster. Because the Chargers likely only roster even 5 or 6 wide receivers to begin with. So there you go. Wide receivers going to be very important to witness. As well as the other guys that might be receiving the ball, tight end. I'm actually more interested in how the tight ends are going to be utilized in these games. Now, don't expect to see a whole lot of, maybe a little bit, but not a whole lot of Hayden Hurst and maybe even Will Dissly. I expect those guys not to see the field too much. And maybe even Donald Parham, because he's on again, off again, a little bit of injury riddled in his history. But other guys like Benson and Hines especially. Zach Hines could end up being a really big part of this roster. Stone Smart looked really good when I was in camp too. I want to see these guys' talent, but I more so want to see how they are utilized, right? Zach Hines, to me, is a guy who can catch, but is very good in blocking. How are they going to utilize these guys? We're going to see 2, 3 tight ends on the field, more often than not. How are they looking in their blocking? How are they looking getting involved in the passing game? Are they going to be, somebody that's throwing a lot of responsibility when, you see the quarterback come to the line and audible, and all of a sudden you're throwing to these guys that should be blocking? Like, I want to see how all of that unfolds. This Greg Roman offense is going to look a lot different, and I want to see how those tight ends, which is going to end up becoming a crucial position for this team, line up and perform in this environment. So tight ends is going to be big. And don't sleep on other guys like Donald Parham if he is out there in terms of their blocking. Sometimes you see guys in the right situation elevate certain parts of their game. And tight ends in this system, guys like Hayden Hurst, who can be a very good pass blocker but a really bad run blocker, he may end up being a lot better because of the Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman effect. Same thing can be said about a lot of guys on the roster like Donald Parham. All right. Lastly, on the offense, defense shouldn't take too long, but lastly on the offense, the biggest thing I would say in terms of competition to look for outside of the wide receivers is going to be offensive line. There's some guys out there, man, fighting for a roster spot in a position that I would say is highly coveted in the NFL to be a backup in, which is kind of crazy to say, but there's few teams out there that utilize offensive line the way the Chargers do. I would say the Lions, the Eagles, few other teams out there that are very good at constructing offensive lines and utilizing and then featuring them properly exist in the NFL today. The Chargers are one of them. And there's guys out there that understand the opportunity, even at a backup position, in terms of what it can mean for their future. Because this is big, man. The Chargers' depth is going to be huge in terms of offensive line, in terms of a point of emphasis. That's going to be a big thing that they throw resources at, because you're only as strong as your weakest link, and they even want their backups to those links being in good shape. There's guys on the roster like Alex Leatherwood, a bunch of the backup guards, and rookies we've seen in the past. You know, there's going to be guys that are fighting for a roster spot and a fit on this team. And I wish I would have put his photo in the photo, but I'm also hoping to see a little bit of Jordan McFadden in action. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but Jordan McFadden, our guard, I think number 71 on the roster, he's been utilized as a tight end more often than not in training camp. I remember going bananas, seeing it in person quite a few times when I was at training camp a couple of weeks ago. Him lining up, taking snaps from Justin Herbert, and running the football. He caught a couple of passes this past week as well. Keep an eye out for number 71 to be out there playing a little bit of fullback for us as well. But yeah, especially if Ben Mason doesn't suit up for whatever reason. I'm very excited to see some sample size of that. But yeah, take a look at the offensive line. Lots of guys out there fighting for a spot, and some of the big names like Alex Leatherwood as number 67 are ones to watch out there. Very tough to watch offensive line, but it's something worth mentioning in this particular system with Jim Harbaugh. All right, let's move on to the defense. Minter's Madness. This is something I think we are unprepared for. Me especially, man. We've been paying a lot of attention to the offense and all the changes that are going to be going down with them, and what we expect to see from the offense with Justin Herbert in the new run game. But we haven't talked nearly enough about the defense in my mind. And this last scrimmage, this last practice, the joint practice with the Los Angeles Rams really opened my eyes to what this vision could end up being for Jesse Minter. That defense went bonkers. One position in particular did, but the DBs, man, they surprised me in capitalizing on opportunities for turnovers. The physicality of the team surprised me from every position on defense, offense as well, but defense especially. The whole synchronicity and system, everything about it just felt so well tuned. And getting an actual peek of this in an NFL game environment is so exciting to me. I think defense is going to be equally as exciting to watch as offense in these games. I mean, it's a preseason game, but hear me out, man. Let's take a look at one of the biggest strengths of a Jesse Minter defense that we talked about and that he talked about in his presser, and that honestly just exploded versus the Rams last week. It was those edge position players. Those guys went bonkers. Dude, they were one of the biggest reasons why that defense was working, why that defense produced so many turnovers. It feels like the edge position is the cornerstone of the defense. Jesse Minter has done a really good job at constructing the team in a way where it can shine. Now, of course, we're not going to see Joey Bosa. We're not going to see Khalil Mack. But this team is so deep at edge, we're probably going to see a bit of Thule. We're probably going to see a bit of Bud Dupree. Other guys like, Chris Rumpf should be getting a shot. There's a couple other dudes out there, maybe Ty Shelby, and there's one other guy, I forget the name of, I apologize, that's been looking really good. But for the most part, the Chargers' sheer depth at edge should see us a little bit, if not a healthy amount, of two really, really good players in Thule and Bud, and then also some guys that have been, again, budding, for lack of a better term, in training camp at the edge position as well. And if those guys can continue to perform, even at a depth level, like you've got, third-string edges that are really good, playing with the third-string linebackers, defensive line, DBs, if those guys can still play at a high level it should produce what we're hoping to see in a preview of Jesse Minter's defense. The edge position is everything this year. And who knows, man? Who knows what it's going to look like once we got Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack in there together. But till then, I think this is going to offer a really good preview of the depth we have at the position and just how lethal they are when in this system with Jesse Minter. Other guys that I did notice was looking a lot better because of the edge position. You're going to see elevation from almost every position on the depth chart because of the edge position guys. One of the guys I thought were benefiting a lot was the defensive line. Those guys were getting in there. Now, do we see Scott Matlock with the first team? I do think a little bit, but some of the backup guys like Tito and Hinton and those dudes, I do think they're going to see it on a shot to get some reps as well. And I do think if the edge is playing as well as it did versus the Rams, we're going to see some good success unfold from the defensive line position, but it's a really important position to watch in preseason as it's been a major weakness of this team for several seasons now. I want to see some improvement. Can the Jesse Minter team pull this off in just one season? Can we improve from the worst to maybe at least average, above average? I'm hoping to see something that gives me a bit of optimism in those regards. The other guys I'm hoping to see a little bit of something in terms of definition is the linebackers. We're not entirely sure what the linebacker position looks like yet. We kind of understand what their role might be, but we want to see some of the talent unfold. Now, yes, we may not see much of Dan Henley. I don't think we're going to see maybe anything from Junior Colson, but some of the backups like Nick Neiman and Troy Dye, these guys could show us a little bit of how they want to utilize linebacker. And linebacker in a Jesse Minter system, much to the proof of a Junior Colson impact with Michigan, can be very important to that particular system, right? It's very obvious how much they lean in on it. And I want to see a little bit of that utilization in terms of scheme and terms of system, even with some of the backups on Saturday. All right, so linebacker, we'll have to wait and see. Maybe the biggest thing that I'm looking for outside of the edge position, though, on Saturday is going to be the DB depth, okay? More particular for corners. Cornerback has been something I've been very stressed out about as a Chargers fan this offseason. We didn't address it in a way that I was hoping we would. We didn't go in on the draft in certain players that I was hoping we would, even though we did make it out with a couple of really nice ones later in the draft. And it's a position that I'm still it's very undefined and very shaky for me. Now, recently, we've seen a lot of evidence to suggest that Christian Fulton could be turning a corner with the Chargers, which is very exciting. He was a shining star in that joint practice with the Rams. Absolutely stellar. We've seen Jasir Taylor look great in the nickel, right? I need to see more proof of that in these games. I need to see Cam Hart step up. Maybe he doesn't suit up for this one. Who knows? But Tariq still has been amazing in the nickel lately. We've seen Dean Leonard flash at times last season. I need to see these DBs produce if they can. They produced great in the joint practice. I would love to see it even more in the preseason. And again, if the edge players are playing up to par like they have been, it should open up more opportunities for the DBs, which again, mind you, the team collectively for 6 turnovers on the joint practice with the Rams this last week, and largely in part to the DB play. Hoping to see more of that to improve my optimism of their capability for the season. Man, they're more than capable of holding down the fort. All right. Next up, in terms of DB depth as well, something else I'm going to definitely be paying attention to. I don't have them on the screen here, but pay attention to number 37. There's a couple of them out there. So just look for the name on the jersey. Tony Jefferson should be one guy that I do think could make the roster. JT Woods, safety is going to be pretty important in terms of depth coming in. And so just keep an eye on the safeties, because whoever's out there for a majority making plays or whatever could end up being the guy that plays in place of Derwin James when he's moving around the field in the nickel or at edge or wherever, linebacker, wherever he might be at any time. Okay. And then finally, something to pay attention to, something that's going to have some time for me or require some time for me to get used to, is going to be the new special teams or the new kickoff rules, right? They start at the 20, nobody moves until the ball's in the hands of the receiver, and then they kind of go at it. This opens up some opportunity for returners. Right? It's going to be a little bit more difficult at times for special teams to get their hands on some of the shiftier guys in the NFL, and that's a guy that we have on the roster in Darius Davis. I think this new kickoff is going to be something fun to watch. The Chargers could take advantage of it because Ryan Ficken, the Chargers special team coordinator, he's one of the best in the NFL. And if he can figure out something to utilize these new rules and take the league by surprise with some of the guys that we have on the roster, it's him. So keep an eye out for that. Finally, to wrap up this video, a couple of words about the Seattle Seahawks before we get into the score prediction. Seattle Seahawks, if you guys are coming in here wondering what to expect from the opponent, again, my short answer is I don't know. I don't even know if Seattle Seahawks fans really know at this point, even just as us Chargers fans don't really know because it's preseason. However, a couple of guys to kind of keep your eyes out for. They did just pick up, I think it was Sam Howell, right? I think he's going to be the guy you see a lot of the snaps for at quarterback. They've got some strengths in terms of running back. They got good receivers. JSN's going to need to see some reps. D. Eskridge. They just picked up Laviska Shenault. Their offensive line's not too bad either. Byron Murphy is another guy that they just drafted that seems like he's going to be a pretty big impact for their defense. He was one of my favorite guys on defense in the NFL draft as a whole. He's going to be nasty. Let's see how he looks out there with Leonard Williams as well, who's a very good defensive lineman. Jaron Reed's also very good. They also got Chenna Nwosu. So I think the defensive line is probably the biggest thing that I'm a little bit worried about in this game. But again, it's preseason. We'll see how things shape out. And they also have a really good DB core as well. Seahawks always have been a pretty good defensive team. So we'll keep an eye out for all these guys. But more or less, it should be fun. Both of these teams should be giving us a preview of what to expect from their seasons. And the Chargers, I think a lot of us have a good idea of who to root for. The Seahawks, we'll have to wait and see what they roll out with. Again, I'm not as familiar with the Seahawks, but from what I can tell, they should be a pretty good defensive unit. They should have a pretty decent run game. It should be a fun one for Chargers fans regardless. So with that, man, my score prediction for this game is Chargers 17, Seahawks 10. Nothing crazy, right? Again, it's preseason. I really don't care to get the scores right. I'm more interested on the individual players and storylines and development of these guys and how the roster could be shaped in these preseason weeks. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been the Director. Give me your preseason game score prediction in the comment section for kicks and giggles. And remember to check out ExpressVPN. I put out a whole video tutorial on this. I may end up putting one more out just as kickoff is happening to help you guys get access to the games without having to pay near $1,000, for other legitimate methods. This legitimate method is much cheaper. We're talking like $20-$50 a month at the very most. And that's the way I'm going to be doing it this season as well. Then also definitely check out Underdog Fantasy, where things are definitely starting to heat up and make things exciting even in the preseason. We'll catch you guys next time. As always, bolt up, stay frosty, get ready to watch some Brendan Rice on Saturday, man. I'm so friggin' stoked.